What are you doing, Alex?
I was just about to try out my new sundial.
Your new what?
A sundial. You see this part here? Thanks to it and the sun, I can tell the time through the shadow on the dial. But you've got to orient the dial in the direction of geographic north, which you can find with your compass. Ah, it's exactly 3 o'clock.
But it's not, look!
Huh? I don't get it.
Are you sure you haven't made a mistake in your calculations?
Oh no, it's impossible. I did exactly what the instructions told me. Okay, maybe Jeannie can solve the mystery.
Kids, it seems you've got a little time problem. The first thing you've got to know is that the time on our watches is different from the time on the sundial.
Oh, then I wasn't mistaken when I made my calculations.
No, but the time indicated on the sundial isn't wrong either. It's the time in relation to the sun, but in the summertime, we move our clocks ahead. It's what we call daylight saving time. It gives us more hours of daylight and helps to save energy.
Oh, I see.
Jeannie, how did people first learn to measure time?
First, do you have any idea why people felt the need to measure time?
Well, not really.
Follow me.
We didn't catch anything. How about you?
No, nothing at all.
We hunted all day long and didn't catch
What
a
are we
thing.
going to eat?
Oh, this is terrible.
I don't know what to do.
It's impossible.
Hey, what's going on here?
The snow's all melted, but the animals haven't come back.
It's exactly as I had told you. We should have waited 2 more moons before going out hunting.
Yes, but our witch doctor said that the sun was high enough and the warm season was here.
Yes, but the witch doctor's been wrong.
There wasn't any effective way for these hunters to measure time and to predict the change of seasons.
When the sun is as high as it is now, the animals return.
No, you're wrong. It's still too cold at night, and the animals won't return for at least 2 more moons.
You may be right.
Oh no, already? Hey, look at the sun.
It's going down. It's just as I said. The days are still much too short, and that's why there's nothing to hunt.
Let's go back.
Yes, there's no sense in staying back.
Hey!
I think we'd better wait a little longer before we plant our grains. In fact, I'm
look at
sure
all those
it's
grains.
much too soon.
Wow. Oh, help. Help me.
Hey, what's all this about? What are you doing? You should know better than that.
I'm sorry. You all look so worried. What's wrong? What's the problem?
We don't know what to do.
If you ask me, we should plant them now. Oh, we ask the same question every year.
It's difficult to choose the right moment. We're never sure if we can harvest our food before the bad weather returns.
But tell me, Jeannie, how did they finally figure it out?
In order to measure time, man began by observing the cycles of the moon and the sun. They saw that the cycles were always the same. The very first hunters and farmers realized that the best time for hunting and harvesting depended on the seasons. And so, using the movements of the sun, they discovered that the summer solstice corresponds to the longest day of the year and the winter solstice to the shortest. Here are the remains of the Stonehenge Sanctuary in England, built thousands of years ago. The stone blocks were used to observe the sun's and the moon's movements. Stonehenge is the ancestor of the calendar and the first astronomic observatory.
Oh, wow, they were pretty clever, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
But Jeannie, why are the days and nights longer and shorter according to the seasons?
I know, just a second.
Tell us! Go on, Alex!
It's because, well,
Hey, look, kids, I brought you some sun. Not bad, eh? As you know, it's the sun that lights and heats the earth. And as you also know, it only lights 1/2 of it at a time.
yes, we know that.
And you know as well that the earth rotates on its own axis.
Yes, sure we do. We also know that the earth revolves around the sun.
Right, our planet's never in the same place. What's more, the Earth's axis inclines 23 degrees 27 minutes in relation to the perpendicular angle. You see it as it revolves around the sun. During the Earth's revolution around the sun, its axis remains parallel to itself. And so in winter in the northern hemisphere, the sun's rays are at a more acute angle to the Earth's surface. The energy we receive from the sun is very spread out, and that's why the weather isn't very hot. And in summer, it's exactly the opposite. The sun's rays fall almost directly on the Earth, thus heating it up. That's why, in what we call the temperate zones, there are 4 different seasons each year, during which the length of the day and the night are never the same.
A single dial would make measuring simpler.
Oh, you've got 2 different sundials here. Which one is correct?
But they're both perfectly correct.
Huh? But how come?
Because this one is correct in winter and the other in summer.
It's quite simple. The Babylonians divided the day in 2. From sunrise to noon, they counted 6 hours. And from noon to sunset, another 6 hours, making 12 hours in each day. The problem is the days are longer in summer than in winter.
They needed a different sundial for each season.
Yes, and we've reduced the number to 2, 1 for summer and 1 for winter.
Of course, in their time, it was difficult to imagine that an hour's time differed in summer and in winter. Sundials were greatly improved as time went on, and they became more accurate. Some became portable, others more sophisticated, with a mobile stem adaptable to all seasons. With some sundials, you could even read the hour in relation to the month.
Oh, this one looks like the sundial I made.
Right! You've simply got to point it towards the north to tell the time of day. Now, let's look at the water clock. Ow! Hey, watch it!
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, I see. You use these coconuts to measure time, huh?
Yes, we measure time by the number of shells filled. Ah, it's sinking. Hey, you can go ahead.
You sound the gong each time one sinks?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have to start all over again? Oh, that poor boy, what a terribly boring job. But by using the system of filling shells up with water, they succeeded in creating the very first clock. The Egyptians and then the Greeks improved the water clock, making it more and more accurate. This is a Chinese water clock. Revolutionary, huh?
Yes, except we have to stay right next to it all the time. Oh, time to fill it up again.
The problem is that our water clock isn't accurate enough. We must find a way for the water to flow more regularly.
I know. Let's try a 3rd bucket.
Yes, of course. In fact, we could even use a 4th bucket.
Great idea! Let's go back to ancient Greece. The Greeks had a very original way of using the water clock. Hey, citizen, what are you doing with this water?
I'm simply measuring the elapsed time.
Well, that's interesting, but what for?
Our laws require the prosecution and the defense have equal speaking time. I calculate the time by the flow of water.
Hey, stop! It's going to overflow! I think I might have been a little too loud. Anyway, the Greeks really improved the water clock. I'll show you. This is the wind tower in Athens, the capital of Greece. It was also used as the public clock. Inside this tower, the Greek physicist Stesibius built a very accurate water clock. I'll let the inventor tell you.
This yellow float allows for the automatic variation in the distribution of water above it so that the flow remains constant. Thanks to this regularity, the clock is much more accurate.
Now that's good thinking. Ah! Oh, I'm getting seasick. Oh, how could anyone invent such a diabolical instrument?
It just takes a little bit of thinking and calculating. I've done it. It's all water under the bridge now.
And I feel shipwrecked.
Jeannie!
Go on, make fun of me. I could have caught pneumonia.
We're not making fun of you, Jeannie.
You are.
Don't be silly. Come on, tell us the rest of the story.
Do you mean it? Okay, now where was I? Oh, I know. Thanks to the invention of the water clock, the hourglass, and later on the mechanical clock, man progressed from breaking down time sequences irregularly to a more regular breakdown. First, let me explain what we mean by an irregular breakdown. In short, from dawn to sunset, ancient civilizations counted 12 hours, and from sunset to dawn, another 12 hours. But since days are longer in summer than in winter, the length of an hour varied according to the season. Now, you've got to admit that the system wasn't very practical.
I get it. It's strange to think that what we call an hour was different with each season.
Yes, go on.
So they finally divided the day into 24 equal hours, forgetting about the idea of day and night. An hour became an hour.
I hate it when students know more than their teacher. Well, let's continue. The first mechanical clock was invented in the 13th century. The Italians and the Germans were the pioneers. Do you know what these clocks look like? This part is called the pendulum. Oh, it's like a seesaw! Listen to the inventors.
The weight supplies the clock's energy.
And the notched wheel regulates the weight's descent.
You see, Jeannie, this system of regulating by the pendulum is the most important innovation to the mechanical clock to date.
And the pendulum is the bar on which you're standing now. All we have to do now is add a face to it in order to tell the time.
But the pendulum is still the hardest part to set.
What a fabulous system! And the hands then tell us the time?
We've encountered one serious difficulty in comparing our clock to the sundial at the church. We find a difference of more than half an hour a day.
More than half an hour? You see, at that time, clocks only had one hand indicating the hour.
I see. If a difference of half an hour isn't important, then an hour hand is enough.
In spite of this handicap, the mechanical clock became part of everyday life, first in monasteries, where it would sound the time for prayers. That clock in the tower can be seen and heard at a distance. It was very helpful to people who lived in the city. Like London, for example, with its world-famous Big Ben. Then, by replacing the weight with a spring, the mechanical clock was even more improved. Let's have a closer look at the mechanism. On the right, you can see that the spring is completely distended. When it slacks, it sends the notched wheel to the left. The cone on which the string is rolled allows the notched wheel to maintain a constant, regular rotation. But before all this progress, many scientists had studied the problem. Galileo was the first to establish pendulum laws by simply observing a lamp swinging. Galileo's discovery greatly inspired Christian Huygens, a renowned Dutch physicist who designed his first clock in 1657.
Oh, it doesn't work. I'll try a heavier pendulum.
It's still too light. Whee! Oh!
It's not working. And a heavier pendulum could do damage to the wheels. I've got to work on another solution.
The problem with Huygens' clock was that the pendulum had to be swung 30 times for the clock to begin working. It was accurate. It only lost a few minutes a day. Huygens solved this problem by creating this part here, a regulator anchor. The pendulum carried the anchor, which forced the wheel to move regularly.
That's it. Thanks to the swinging of the pendulum, we now have a system which breaks down time regularly.
Huygens became the first inventor of the pendulum clock, but he still wasn't completely satisfied. He tried for years to replace the pendulum with something else, and he finally found it. Hey, what's that?
It's a spiral spring which will regulate the clock's mechanism. It's fixed onto the mechanism instead of the pendulum. When the spring is tight, the entire mechanism accelerates. And when it's slack, the mechanism slows down. I found it at last. I knew my intuitions were right.
Whee! Congratulations, Mr. Huygens! But why does man need such an accurate way of telling time? Whoa! As early as the 17th century, it was vital for navigators to be able to determine their position at sea. The ship's position was calculated by its latitude and longitude.
It's simple to calculate our latitude between the equator and the pole by measuring the angle made by the horizon and the North Star. But calculating longitude is much more complicated. The longitude is the angle made by the meridian in which we are located and that of Greenwich. And for that, we need very accurate and effective clocks. If we're unable to calculate our position correctly, we risk being shipwrecked.
Oh, shipwreck? No!
You scared me, Jeannie. But how can you calculate a ship's position by using a clock?
Huh? Good question.
Oh, it's simple. The day you leave, you set the clock at noon, when the sun is directly overhead. Then, to measure your longitude, you check the time on your clock when the sun is overhead, wherever you are. Look, it's 3 o'clock where you are. This 3-hour difference allows you to calculate how far you've gone since you left. Clocks continued to improve after Huygens' great invention. In 1761, John Harrison, an Englishman, invented a magnificent maritime clock, the chronometer. During a voyage to Jamaica, which lasted 9 weeks, Harrison's chronometer lost only 5 seconds in all that time. Are you still with me, kids? Great! Now I want to show you something fantastic. We're in Japan during the Edo era, at the end of the 19th century. The first mechanical clock came to Japan in 1549. St. Francis Xavier offered it to the Lord who received him. At this time in history, Japan still had a system of irregular time, and the clock was thought of as a work of art and not as a valuable instrument.
You may rise now, please.
My master wishes you to rise. Did you hear?
My name is Hisashige Tanaka, Master. I run a small novelty shop.
Are you the inventor of this magnificent universal clock that I see here?
Yes, Master.
It's the most beautiful I've ever seen, isn't it, Sandayo?
Yes, it is. Rise, please, Hisashige. My master wishes to know how it functions.
It not only gives the time in Japan, but in Western countries as well. And there is a calendar on this side. It also indicates the movements of the sun and the moon.
It is truly marvelous, isn't it, Sandayo?
Oh, yes. My master wishes to purchase your clock.
I am very moved by your interest, Master.
What? He said that he...
Huh?
I didn't realize it was so expensive.
My master wishes to know if you are prepared to lower the price of your clock.
Huh?
I don't honestly know if this Lord really existed or what he looked like. But this beautiful universal clock was one of the few accurate clocks in the world at that time. And this clock can still be seen and admired today, but no one could afford to buy it then. Nowadays, anyone can afford to have a clock or a watch. They come in all sizes and shapes. Watchmaking has improved tremendously. The quartz watch is a good example. Let's look inside one. The electric current supplied by the battery activates a quartz crystal which begins to vibrate at regular intervals, making the quartz watch incredibly accurate. Here's the most sophisticated clock in the world, and the most accurate, too. This huge machine doesn't look like a clock, does it? It's an atomic clock. Engineers claim that it loses only 1 second every 300,000 years. Now, I'd call that a lot of progress since the sundial, wouldn't you? Did you get all that?
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jeannie. It was really fascinating.
It really was. Thanks a lot.
Just one more thing. Did you know that the entire world sets its watch by what we call Greenwich Mean Time?
Huh? What's Greenwich Mean Time?
Well, we know that the Earth rotates on its axis every 24 hours, right? Which means that it's never day or night everywhere at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means that the time is different according to the country.
You see, to simplify our calculations, we divided the Earth into 24 equal parts. That is the same number as there are hours in a day. Each part is a time zone covering 15 degrees. And so every 15 degrees we change time zones and therefore the time, too. That means that it's possible to have more than one time zone in the same country.
For example, what time is used in Europe?
Winter time in Europe is 1 hour ahead of what we use as our reference, Greenwich Mean Time. In summer, we move the clock ahead another hour, making a difference of 2 hours from Greenwich Mean Time.
That's why my watch had a different time from Alex's sundial.
And what about International Atomic Time?
That's correct, and atomic clocks no longer rely on the Earth's rotation either, but to a physical characteristic of the cesium atom. There is, however, a slight difference between Greenwich and atomic time.
In that case, Greenwich time isn't accurate.
The difference, I assure you, is so small that it has absolutely no effect on our everyday life. But this difference can be important to navigation or for certain sciences which require great precision, such as astronomy, for example.
And so, people use two different systems to measure time.
Yes, but since 1972, we've adopted the system of international atomic time measured by our atomic clocks.
But how do you coordinate the two systems, huh?
We compensate for the differences by periodically adjusting atomic time by 1 or 2 seconds.
So that the two systems always have the same time?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, I wonder how much more accurate clocks can possibly get.
Anyway, all that matters is being on time.
Oh.
Jeannie, you drank the engineer's cocktail.
It was delicious.
Hey, what are you doing? Oh, an alarm clock watch.
Mm-hmm. Hello, is this Jeremy's house?
Hi, this is Jeremy here.
Wow. Hi, Jeremy, what's up? How are you doing?
Hey, wanna come over to my house for a while?
Sure, I'm on my way.
Incredible, a telephone watch.
See you later.
That's fantastic. Hey, wait for me. I want to go too. Wait up.